we're going to dive into this really fascinating experiment that asks a pretty huge question. Could an AI actually replace a human therapist? The answer might not be what you think.
So, let's just put it out there. Could you really turn to a machine for genuine therapeutic help? Okay, but before we jump into the experiment itself, we've got to get a handle on the tech that's making all this buzz. I mean, what is AI, really? And how in the world does something like ChatGPT actually work? All right, so let's break down this whole AI thing. We're going to take a quick trip, starting from the very beginning, the first ideas of artificial intelligence, and bring it all the way up to the super powerful models we're all using today.
This idea of smart machines, it's not new at all. It actually goes way back to the 1950s with Alan Turing's famous test. But things really started to kick off in 1956 when the term artificial intelligence was officially coined. Still, it took a while for it to hit the mainstream. It wasn't until 1997, when IBM's Deep Blue beat the world chess champion, that everybody else really sat up and took notice. That was a huge moment.
So, at its core, what are we even talking about with AI? Well, think of it like this. It's the whole attempt to get machines to do stuff that usually requires a human brain. Things like solving problems, learning new things, and, understanding language. Okay, so AI is the big umbrella. Underneath that, you've got machine learning, or ML. And the key word here, for sure, is learning. Instead of a programmer having to write code for every single little thing, these systems get better all on their own, just by chewing through massive, and I mean massive, amounts of data. And that brings us right up to the cutting edge, generative AI. This is the magic behind the tools you've heard of, like ChatGPT. Its whole deal is creating brand new stuff. Text, images, you name it. And the engine making it all happen, that's called a large language model, or LLM for short. And yeah, it's trained on an unbelievable amount of text and data. So, how do these things actually learn? Well, it basically boils down to two main approaches. First, you've got supervised learning. Think of this like giving the AI flashcards with the answers on the back. It gets data that's already labeled, it makes a guess, and then it checks to see if it got it right. Easy enough. But then there's unsupervised learning, which is kind of wild. You just dump a giant pile of data in front of it and say, go figure it out. And it just starts finding patterns and connections all on its own. And look, this stuff isn't science fiction. It's already part of your daily life. You ever talk to Siri or Alexa? That's natural language processing, or NLP. You see those self-driving car videos? That's computer vision. And a lot of this is powered by these really complex things called neural networks, which are basically designed to work kind of like a human brain. Okay, so now that we've got the basics covered, let's get back to that big question we started with. It's time to look at the actual experiment. A couple of hypnotherapists decided to do something really interesting. They put ChatGPT on the spot and asked it to write a complete therapy script right from scratch. Now, before I show you what happened, there's something really important to remember here. An LLM, like ChatGPT, isn't thinking or feeling anything. Seriously. The best way to think about it is like the predictive text on your phone, just on a massive, massive scale. All it's doing is choosing the next word that's most likely to come next, based on all the data it's seen. So here's how they did it. This whole process of telling the AI what to do is called prompting. First, they gave it a role. Act as a therapist. Simple. Then they set the tone and the goal. But the first draft it spit out was a little too on the nose, a bit too direct. So they went back and tweaked the prompt, asking it for a more subtle, indirect style, something specific to hypnotherapy.
And here's a little snippet of what the AI came back with. Let me read it to you. In this tranquil space, allow yourself to connect with the innate confidence that resides within you. Picture a radiant light at the very core of your being, shining brightly and filled with unwavering self-assurance. So what do you think? Does that sound like something a therapist would say?
All right, so after going through the whole script, the experts gave their final verdict. What did these professional hypnotherapists score the AI's work? A 6 out of 10.
Okay, so why a 6? That's the really interesting part. Their critique wasn't that the script was bad. Not at all. In fact, they said it was technically pretty solid. The problem, it was just generic. It had no personality, no original spark. It felt more like a copy and paste job of things a therapist might say instead of a thoughtful, cohesive script. So a 6 out of 10. It's not a complete fail, but it's definitely not an A+ either. It's kind of average. And that led them to the next big question, what if it's not about replacement? What if a human could work with the AI to make it better? And they had some great ideas for how to do that. First, they said you could actually train it better. You could feed it a bunch of high-quality scripts that you love to teach it the exact style you're after. And second, you could get way more specific in your instructions. You could tell it to use very particular therapeutic techniques. Things like NLP analog markers, which are these subtle little verbal cues therapists use. It really drives home this idea that maybe this is more about collaboration than competition.
You know, this whole experiment is a perfect little snapshot of a much, much bigger trend. AI is quickly moving beyond just being a novelty or a simple tool. It's on its way to becoming a totally normal part of our world in ways that go way beyond just writing therapy scripts.
And I mean, we're going to see it everywhere. In your car, in your home, it's going to be integrated into your workplace. And yeah, that might mean some jobs get replaced. When you hop on a website, that chatbot you're talking to, it's going to be a sophisticated AI. Call a customer service line, you'll probably be talking to an AI first. This stuff is about to become as common as the internet.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Look, the AI got a 6 out of 10 in this one experiment. But here's the thing. It's learning and improving constantly. So the real question we have to ask ourselves isn't about today, it's about tomorrow. When this technology gets so good that it can perfectly fake empathy, when it can simulate understanding so well that you can't tell the difference, who or what are you going to choose to talk to?